One of the most paramount things in a small garage is efficient storage, so tirelessly I've thought and rethought and eventually implemented a system that works for me through a series of DIY creations. Creation after creation, I go to solve problems. The more tools I buy, the more my tool addiction goes, the more problems I have. The big problem is these batteries. The M18 batteries are easy to stow, but it's these M12 batteries that are odd, and I had to figure out a way to store these things in a way that's efficient and secure, but also simple. So through a very simple DIY project that I've used for tons of other things, we're going to go ahead and make a silicone mold to hold all these in place. It'll be pressure fitted inside a piece of metal and then eventually mounted, and it's awesome. Alright, so here we go. If you're a DIY person, you likely have most of these things already at your house. You probably have a scissors, cutting utensils, a hot glue gun and glue sticks, some saran wrap somewhere. What you'll need from the store though is some #1 silicone, and you could use cardboard, but I got this foam board that you see, that white piece underneath me. That's from Hobby Lobby for like $2. I'm wrapping all these batteries in saran wrap to protect them from any sort of damage from the water and the soap and the silicone once we shove these things into the silicone. We're going to just get these all prepped, and then we're going to get ready to add the silicone to a tray. Make sure it's a tray that you don't really care about. I just used a plastic little Tupperware bowl later. I paced out my side. I was I didn't know how much silicone I actually had, which would cover the area, but I tried to make it for like 12 slots. I ended up only making it for 7. That's how much silicone I had. So literally one tube will frame about a battery and a half. So if you mix 2 together, it'll do 3. So just take a little bit of time to relax and configure how you think you want to lay this out, because once you mix the silicone and it gets exposed to water and it starts to become the catalyst and harden, you're gonna want to have this in your hand. You're not gonna have time to really mess around before the silicone hardens. It's gonna literally cure in minutes, and by the time you start doing the other batches for the other batteries, the one side will have already cured. The whole thing will cure in like 10 to 15 minutes, and you can literally pull the mold out and let it dry and then use it. I got the #1 all-purpose silicone because that's what was told for me to get a long time ago when I was trying to make proto putty, and so I just kind of stuck with that. I mean, stick with what works. I don't really know the difference between silicone, but I think most of it acts as a catalyst from water. And then we're going to be using soap to make it slimy so we can actually use it. Note that I have tried this without soap. It's almost impossible to get off your hand, and it doesn't mix evenly. You're going to have to squish this stuff after you pour the entire tube in there. You're going to have to squish it with your hand over and over and over again until you see it kind of discolor, like it's clear or clearish, and then you'll eventually see it start to turn kind of like a white foggy, and you'll feel the texture literally change. At that point in time, it's maybe the tackiest that it ever is. It's like gonna run on your glove, and you just, at that point, you need to grab it and you need to shove it inside the mold box before it hardens too much, and then you can't do anything with it. It smells terrible. It smells like sulfur. So right when it fogs up white and it's really sticky and it doesn't want to come off your glove, that's right when it's gonna start hardening, and then as you really got to get it in order and shape it and form it to fit, and then get ready to press your battery in there. If you just let that stuff cure on your glove, it literally comes right off. Yeah, I ripped a hole in my glove now. Great. So for how we're doing it, with the gap we're doing it, I'm envisioning a gap that you will either be able to fit like a 2 amp or a 3 to 6 amp battery, which is substantially bigger on the top. So that amount of silicone right there should give us enough gaps to kind of just evenly stick either size battery into the slot. So when we're doing that, if you get a big enough container, which I did not have, and you can mix 2 big things of silicone inside soap and water without it splashing outside the bowl, 2 tubes will fit 3 batteries to the T without you having to worry about like running out of silicone to mold the top. So that would definitely, I started running out of spacing issues. You see me kind of cramming those in there and then trying to fix it. If you measure correctly after you watch this video, you can probably form the top a little better. So obviously the bottom and the sides will be symmetrically square, but the less time you spend messing with the mold on top, while it's curing, the more time you can spend there kind of spreading it out and smoothing it out. And that will stop a lot of residual problems later with trying to kind of seam up the top. Another tool that came in really handy as you're trying to kind of squish and mold the silicone around the battery itself was just that little piece of foam board that I cut off that kind of just helped me wedge it in there, kind of like a scraper. So that just have a few of those on hand just as a makeshift tool to kind of help you balance and level it out. So the first two batteries are pretty much completely dry. We're actually ready to kind of test fit these without the plastic in there. And we're going to show you how they molded in. Pretty sweet, huh? An exact mold. It really, if you look at that mold, you look just how like oddly shaped. It was shaped like a butt and like odd pins in the front. So it would, I mean, to make that in like a metal bracket, that'd be actually kind of really tedious and not near as easy or fast. Like we did this whole project in like 30 minutes, and that was with me talking. And now to kind of solve the bigger issue, which is the top. Look how jacked up the top looks versus how symmetrically sound the rest of it is. And that was because I scrambled to rush to get the molds right and spaced. And find out, silicone's actually really hard to cut. Who knew? It went everything from that knife to like a serrated serious knife to the Sawzall. I even tried the bandsaw. It all failed. I ended up just having to makeshift it. I mean, actually the bandsaw really jacked it up pretty bad. The only thing that worked was like this. You know, the regular cutting knife, and I had to kind of pull on the silicone as I was cutting it, and I had to do that forever to kind of make it look somewhat decent. Man, this stuff is impervious to being cut. Like it met my match today. Set me straight. The bandsaw didn't even cut it. Like, the bandsaw cuts everything. I mean, the only thing I didn't take to it was a circular saw. I was afraid. That might have actually been what I needed. I didn't want the circular saw to jar up in the silicone and throw it and chop my arm off. I was afraid, but it's the only thing I didn't try. The only thing I didn't think about it, though. Okay, so between like a fillet knife and this, the only thing that works. I'm at a loss for what cuts silicone good. Like, anybody want to give me a comment down there and tell me, you know, enlighten me on the ways of the cutting the silicone? It's tough, but look at that, boys. Let's push the. So my plan here is, because those will just flop right in and out if I don't like have sort of a pressure fit ways. This rain gutter not only is going to give me clearance, I can just like attach it right there to any sort of wall I want to hang these, but I'm hoping it'll pressure fit these. So I'm going to push them in. Otherwise I'm going to pull this thing back out and cut it a little bit. So there it went in. So standalone, these will just fall out of the mold. So let's see. Okay, those are not going to fall out. That's exactly what I wanted. Actually, it's much better than I thought. Sweet! I mean, that one has a little bit of tension. That one might fall out. Let me see. Will that one fall out? No. Sweet. So they hold them. Yeah. The fact that it was slightly thicker than the angle, like it was like that much, gave me the pressure fit look, because obviously silicone is very pliable. You can push them in there. I mean, we're just gonna cut that off very tactfully, carefully, and then we're gonna mount that thing. So here we are back to the garage to see how this thing stacks up against all the other mods in my main tool locker. You have to make sure it clears the driver holders. Sweet. Okay. Now that we got all that if you have the pack out systems, you can stick one right in the pack out systems. A lot of these are just blank. Some of them have like templates in them. A lot of them just have blank systems. You can just stick a mold like that in and it'll hold all your batteries. I have too many of these things. They were really bothering me. It was okay when I had a few sitting around, and then they got 4, then 8, and then I was like, man, I gotta figure out a system to put those somewhere. So I'm really happy with that system. Really works very well.